There's a show at the Noyes Museum that really packs a punch. It's called MICA Then and Now, and showcases a large number of alumni of Baltimore's legendary art school, the Maryland Institute College of Art. The idea of MICA Then and Now is to show how graduates have evolved since their school days. Many but not all of the artists are exhibiting work done when they were students, along with their more current work. Barry Nemeth, the chair of the painting department at MICA, is the driving force behind the show. In 2013, the show was split between two venues, the Ethan Cohen Gallery in New York City and Beacon Cube, a converted high school in rural New York State. I made a film about those shows, which you can see by Googling MICA Then and Now. Now there's a third venue for MICA Then and Now, in New Jersey. The reason I wanted to make another film is that there's a lot of different work in this Noyes Museum show. Plus, I got to meet some of the artists that I hadn't back in 2013.
Hi, I'm Kevin Labadee.
At Beacon Cube, Kevin exhibited 100 feet of sprawl, a ton of connected paintings in a wide variety of styles. At the Noyes, he has something quite different.
I love circles because they're self-contained, they have a center, and they want to move. That gets me started. When I found myself putting one next to the other, psychologically, it's a lot like this conversation you and I are having right now. We're kind of touching or connecting here for a moment. You're going to go your way and I'm going to go mine. We're both going to carry with us some little spark from all of this, and that's the way I kind of see them. You know, it's just sparking each other and kind of moving back and forth.
I'm Deborah Rowling.
As a student at MICA, Deborah Rowling created this mixed media painting of a female torso with a candied ham in a strategic position. Though stylistically looser than what would follow, it clearly anticipates her future style.
I graduated in 1977. I went previously to my father's art school, which was Maryland College of Art and Design.
Does your father feel like you betrayed him by going to MICA?
No, actually, I think he was kind of glad to get rid of me.
There is such a visual richness in Deborah Rowling's work, with lots of layered imagery executed in various styles.
I want to tell a story with my paintings. I want people to look at it and become involved in it. One of them, I have a spinner on it. I'd like for them to maybe spin the wheel. Then I really want them to make up their own story about it.
The one called Best Friends, is one of the figures you and the other your best friend?
Yes, it is.
You want to say hello to your best friend?
Hi, Diane Armstrong.
Joe Giordano. I have 3 pieces in the show. One of the pieces is something I started in 2002 when I was turning 60. I'm 72 now. It's called the Existential Self-Portrait. 12 years later, I'm on my 95th self-portrait painted on top of one another. I'll paint it until I get a self-portrait, and then I paint over the self-portrait and paint over the self-portrait. I'm always trying to find out where I want to go with it, where it takes me, because it's taking me now more than I'm taking it.
Courtney Puckett. I live in Brooklyn. I'm a MICA graduate from the BFA program 2002. Early on, I discovered that while I was technically able to paint realistically, I didn't really have any ideas for paint, so I started using other materials, fabric. That was back in 2001, and I'm still working in that way now.
Did you go to MICA?
No, I went to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. And since I'm not a MICA grad, I'm free to come up with all sorts of crackpot theories about the aesthetic choices these MICA artists make.
Hi, I'm James Lipovac. I'm a painter and do a lot of installation work with constructed landscapes of mountains and boats.
I went to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts where there's a long tradition of painterly realism, and I see a painting back in 2003 that you fit right in with that, and then you became more of a, I guess, neo-modernist perhaps?
I like neo-modernist, that's good. Well, they're both still lifes really. The paintings of the boats were actually made from a big giant still life that I created, and I paint them much in the same way and I think about them in the same way, but I'm more concerned with the texture of the painting, relating specifically to the textures in the setup. The other painting was more about an illusion.
I have this concept that there's a lot of flattened representational imagery from MICA. David Humphrey and Howie Weiss being two examples. There is representation, but it's more graphic. How come so many artists seem to have that?
Personally, I'm really concerned with not necessarily what something looks like, but what it actually is. And I think that there's something about a reduced language where you're maybe flattening it, or maybe you're making it, I wouldn't describe it necessarily cartoony, but I think that it's about speaking beyond what it looks like and how it reacts with the things that are around it, and editing down that I think I draw back to Philip Guston, trying to work with realism but in a way that lives in your own landscape that you created as opposed to something that you observe directly.
That's pretty well put. You sound like you should get a job teaching art.
I teach foundations drawing at Pratt.
Do you often regale them with how their school is kind of lousy compared to the one you went to?
Never say that. No, I never say that.
But you think it.
You know, Barry went to Pratt too, right?
Oops.
William Eckhart Kohler. I've always been very painterly to a fault, where I just paint over everything and overwork, so there's been an effort that I've been making recently to almost work against the natural instinct, and by doing so, creating a freedom in containment. I made a conscious effort to develop the architectural element of my work and maintain the hand. I've been working a lot with these kind of simple template ideas. This is a door, this is a window, this is a ladder. But there's all this other stuff that goes on that's ambiguous and mysterious, because I'm thinking about them as analogies for emotional and spiritual experience.
There seems in your work and some other people in the show an interest in early modernism.
That happens. It's certainly not an effort on my part. No matter what I do, it always comes out. There's a surrender involved to who we are as artists. He was somebody I went to school with when I was at MICA. I remember that he was bipolar, and he would talk about working for the transportation department, and guys who would stick their head out behind a truck and the car would come and take it off. Like, that was the kind of things he was talking about while I was painting him.
What was the eye representing?
When I painted him, I accidentally ended up with a little third eye on his forehead, and so I thought, well, I'll put another eye on the wall behind him. In those days, I'm just going to do shit. I can do this. I can do anything. There was a kind of freedom in terms of how I approached painting then, and maybe still now.
I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there are some wonderful painterly realists in this show. Neil Riley and Marilyn Brent being two prime examples. And in addition to neo-modernists, there are also some good old-fashioned modernists. Both Herman Merrill and Emily Rothschild are now in that great art studio in the sky. Barry Nemeth told me about Ms. Rothschild.
These two are created by Emily Rothschild. passed away a number of years ago. Amelie Rothschild's daughter, whose name is also Amelie Rothschild, and her husband, Angelo Pontecaborli, collaborated on this book of Amelie's mom's work. It does document a whole lifetime of very creative, inventive, and wide-ranging sculptures, jewelry, paintings, you name it.
The Noyes Museum is a terrific regional art museum. It's located not far from my home in Ocean City, New Jersey. A few weeks before the MICA show opened, I drove over to watch the installation process. The museum personnel were assisted by a number of the artists, and make no mistake, they worked like dogs. Installing a huge show like this is the kind of work that I much prefer to film rather than to do. Thank goodness these MICA folks aren't as lazy as me. Michael Frank, along with Barry Nemeth, curated this show.
My name is Michael Frank, and I collaborate with another artist by the name of Gerard Amselem. Grew up in Paris and now lives in South Orange, New Jersey, and I live in Maplewood, New Jersey. We've been doing this for about 4 years. Somehow, when Gerard and I met, we clicked. I felt it right away, and he talks about how he felt it right away. We aren't brothers, but we are like brothers. We aren't related, but it's like we're related. We're not married, and we're not gay. Two heterosexual men who have a link. We become together a third artist. That's the beauty of it.
Not only do Michael and Gerard paint together, they do it publicly. On March 28, 2015, at 1 p.m., you can watch them create a painting together at the Noyes while the musical group Ethel performs.
All of the actual painting, the process of the work, is completely emotional and physical. And that's why painting large is preferable, because we can really move. It's kind of a ballet of painting.
And there will be a very different type of performance at the Noyes on March 5th at 6:30.
I'm Renee Rendine.
Did you start doing performance while you were a student at MICA?
I did, at the very end. I thought I was going to be a painter. I started out painting, then I learned to weave, and I had this insect metaphor between using my whole body to create structures. And from there, I felt if I engaged in a process, then people couldn't dismiss construction process from the work, and that's how it evolved. I respond to spaces and situations, think about what inspires me, and then I make a construction that relates to the space, and I activate it in some quiet, understated way.
And this one was at the Corcoran?
This is my first museum show.
Oh!
Yeah.
So what are you going to be doing here?
I was paying close attention to the decoys in the case and some of the woven structures that relate to birds' nests. So I'm constructing a structure for myself that's somewhat bird-like, very fiber-inspired, crocheting and zip tying and stitching. And then I'll be systematically altering it through performance.
Many of the MICA alumni live a great distance from the Noyes Museum. Barry Nemeth is an extremely generous soul who can and did talk at length about every artist in the show. For brevity's sake, I will include just a couple of his observations of MICA artists who couldn't make the opening.
Unfortunately, Kevin Kearney wasn't able to make it to this opening, but he actually is my first great student. I had Kevin in a class 1971. He was delightful, challenging, and obviously gifted. Very, very ambitious, incredibly skilled, but also intensely personal in his own ways. Kevin and I have kept in touch since he graduated. I know that he did stop painting for quite a while, almost 20 years, but he didn't lose his hand or his eye or his heart at all. I told him about the MICA show, and he just got back into the paintings. What he did was fantastic, and he's pushing them further all the time. In the case of Mimi Aritsky, she was never a student of mine, but she came to MICA and was a very good critic. I like her work. I like the conversation between representation and abstraction. It goes back and forth, woven so that it's rather seamless. I use gouache myself, but I use it fairly wet. As I'm looking at hers, there's a kind of dry quality to the application, a kind of scumbling, light over dark, and I think she handles the medium quite beautifully. She has a way of handling the surface that's quite personal.
MICA, MICA, MICA. This show is so terrific, it's well worth driving over to see. Thomas Wolfe wrote, "You can't go home again." But for alumni of a Baltimore art school, there may be an opposite kind of problem.
Balmer!
Balmer!
How are you doing there, sir? Good. Did you get lost?
Well, we had trouble getting out of Balmer. For some reason, the GPS lady wanted me to go home. You know how you press home, you know? You
have to type in the correct address.
Well, I put in the correct address, but she just kept leading us back to my house. So I thought maybe maybe it's something in the stars and I shouldn't leave Baltimore, ever.
Well, I sure disagree, and hope that you and your fellow MICA grads come back often and bring all that wonderful art with you.